There are dogs who serve, and then there are dogs who remember. Rex had served beside Officer Daniel Carter for years, his loyalty unquestioned. When Daniel was killed in a mission gone wrong, Rex returned alone, limping, scarred, but alive. The department called it bad luck. His widow called it injustice. 10 months later, in a crowded courtroom, Daniel's little girl sat holding Rex's leash. She hadn't spoken since the night her father died. Reporters whispered that she was broken, that she didn't understand. But they were wrong. When she opened her mouth, she didn't speak. She sang a lullaby, one her father had written. And as her voice rose, Rex lifted his head, his eyes fixed on a man in the crowd. Within minutes, that dog's instincts and a child's song would expose a truth buried under years of silence, a truth that would prove that love and loyalty never forget. The courtroom was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your chest and makes every breath sound too loud. Rows of people filled the benches, reporters scribbling notes, officers in uniform, lawyers whispering strategy. Dust motes floated in the sharp light, cutting through the tall windows, painting the air with streaks of gold and shadow. At the center of it all sat a little girl, too small for the chair she occupied. Her name was Lily Carter, just 7 years old, but her presence drew every gaze in the room. Her legs barely reached the floor, her shoes scuffed and swinging nervously beneath the wooden bench. Beside her, calm and unmoving, sat Rex, the German shepherd her father had trained and loved like a son. His coat gleamed like bronze under the courtroom lights, his ears alert, but his eyes soft, fixed on the girl as though guarding her from the world. No one dared disturb that fragile stillness between them. Lily hadn't spoken since the night her father died. A few benches away, the prosecutor leaned toward his assistant, voice low but urgent. "She's our key witness. Without her testimony, the defense will bury us alive." His words carried the weight of desperation. On the opposite side, the defense attorney smirked, tapping his pen against the table, confident that a silent child couldn't undo months of manipulation. The judge, a man whose hair had turned silver under the weight of decades in service, adjusted his glasses and studied the child carefully. The courtroom had seen murderers, thieves, and liars, but never something like this. A small girl clutching the leash of a police dog, her eyes as deep and distant as the sea after a storm. "Miss Carter," the judge began softly, his tone gentler than any gavel's strike. "Do you remember what happened that night?" The air thickened. Everyone waited. Lily didn't move. Her fingers twisted around the leash, tightening and loosening in rhythm with her shallow breathing. Rex shifted slightly, sensing her distress. He let out a quiet sigh and placed his head on her knee. The motion drew her eyes downward, to him. For the first time that morning, a trace of comfort flickered across her face. The judge tried again. "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe here." Still nothing. Just silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, Lily's lips parted. A faint hum escaped. Soft, trembling, uncertain at first. A melody. It was so quiet that at first, no one understood what they were hearing. Then, as the sound gathered strength, a few in the room recognized it. A lullaby. Gentle and haunting. The kind of tune a parent might sing under the glow of a nightlight, when the world outside was too big and frightening for a child to bear. Her voice was delicate, fragile like spun glass, yet each note carried something that stilled the room. Even the scribbling reporters stopped mid-sentence. The defense attorney froze, his smirk fading. Rex lifted his head slightly, eyes gleaming as though he remembered the song. His ears twitched in rhythm with each verse, his tail barely moving. For a moment, the dog and the child existed in their own world, where grief, fear, and memory intertwined. But for the adults watching, confusion mixed with unease. Why this song? Why now? The prosecutor's brows furrowed. He glanced down at his notes, flipping through pages as though the answer might be written somewhere between the lines. Nothing. Just the hollow echo of the tune weaving through the room. When Lily finished the first verse, she paused, her small shoulders trembling. Rex nudged her hand gently, as if urging her to continue. And she did, this time with a faint whisper beneath the melody. A few words almost lost in the air. Daddy said, "Sing the truth." The judge blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "Miss Carter?" he asked softly. "Did you say something?" But she was already humming again, her gaze fixed on the floor, lost somewhere far away. The lullaby flowed through the room once more, its rhythm oddly structured, deliberate, measured, almost coded. Whispers rippled across the gallery. A reporter scribbled, "Child sings mystery lullaby." The prosecutor's anxious eyes darted toward the judge, silently asking for guidance. Finally, the judge raised a hand. "That will be enough for now." His voice carried both compassion and gravity. He nodded toward the bailiff. "Take her to rest. She's been through enough." Lily didn't seem to hear. She was still tracing circles on Rex's fur, her humming grew faint, fading into silence. The dog rose obediently when she stood, staying close to her side as the bailiff guided them away. As the doors closed behind her, the room exhaled collectively. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the kind that lingers when something unseen has just brushed past you. The prosecutor leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "That song, I've heard it somewhere before." The judge rubbed his temple, thoughtful. "A lullaby. Simple, but there's something in it." Across the aisle, the defense attorney smirked again, though less confidently this time. "A child's song isn't evidence, Your Honor. Let's not chase ghosts." But even as he spoke, Rex's low growl echoed faintly through the hallway beyond the courtroom, a sound that made every heart inside pause for a beat. The judge's eyes lingered on the closed door, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "but sometimes the truth doesn't speak in words." The camera might have lingered there, on that empty witness chair, the one a little girl had just left behind, and on the quiet leash that had rested against her trembling hands, a symbol of a bond unbroken by death, of a love that refused to fade. Time 200 miles. And somewhere, faint but certain, the melody continued in the distance, a song too innocent for lies, too haunting to forget. The soft hum of the lullaby still echoed faintly in Lily's mind as she sat in the waiting room. Rex curled at her feet. The melody seemed to follow her everywhere, even into her dreams. But tonight, in memory, it took her back to a time before everything shattered. The world was gentler then, a small house on the edge of town, the scent of rain drifting through an open window. The living room glowed in amber light, the kind that makes you forget what sadness feels like. On one side of the room, Officer Daniel Carter sat at a weathered piano, his uniform shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his tie loose, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong, tired arms. His fingers danced clumsily but lovingly across the keys, finding the rhythm of a familiar lullaby. Lily sat beside him on the bench, her legs swinging, her laughter light, la cote unguarded, filled the air. Rex lay on the floor at their feet, tail thumping lazily against the rug with every note. "Daddy," Lily giggled, "you missed a key again." Daniel laughed, deep and warm. "I know, sweetheart. The piano's just teasing me tonight." He glanced at her, his little girl with a smile too bright for this world, and his heart swelled. He played slower now, softer. The melody changed tone, carrying something deeper, almost secret. "Do you remember what I told you about this song?" he asked gently. Lily tilted her head. "That it's our song?" He nodded. "Yes, but it's more than that. It's a promise." She blinked, curious. "A promise?" Daniel smiled. A sad kind of smile that children can sense but never name. "If anything ever happens, this song will help you find the truth. It's like a treasure map, hidden in music. You just have to listen carefully." Rex lifted his head at the word truth, ears pricking, as if he understood. Daniel reached down to scratch behind his ears. "And you, partner, you'll help her, won't you?" The dog gave a soft bark, tail wagging. Lily laughed and wrapped her arms around Rex's neck. "We'll always be together, Daddy. You, me, and Rex. Promise?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment before answering. The light from the window caught in his eyes, steady, proud, but shadowed by something unspoken. "Always, Bug, no matter what." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Then he played the lullaby once more, slower, each note deliberate, as if he were carving it into her memory. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The next morning was colder. The sky had turned the color of gunmetal, and rain whispered against the kitchen window. Daniel stood by the door, buttoning his uniform. The badge on his chest gleamed in the gray light. "Big case today," he said, forcing cheer into his tone. "Just a quick operation, sweetheart. I'll be home before you finish your homework." Lily ran up and hugged his legs tightly. "Promise?" He crouched down, meeting her eyes. "Promise." Then after a pause, he added quietly, "But if I'm late, you know what to do, right?" She frowned. "Sing our song?" He smiled. "That's my girl." He kissed her forehead, then gave Rex a firm pat on the side. "Take care of them, boy." Rex barked once, short and crisp, the sound of obedience and loyalty. Daniel stood, straightened his collar, and walked toward the door. The last thing Lily saw was her father's silhouette framed in the morning light. His figure strong, steady, heroic. She didn't know it would be the last time. The door clicked shut, and the world fell quiet. By noon, the rain had turned into a storm. The news flashed on TV. Police operation gone wrong. Explosion reported. One officer missing. The house filled with sirens in the distance. The sound of panic carried on the wind. Lily's mother dropped a glass that shattered across the kitchen floor. Rex began, pacing restlessly, whining at the door, his instincts alive with something human hearts could barely sense. "Daniel," her mother whispered, trembling. Hours later, headlights swept across the living room as a patrol car pulled up. An officer stepped out, hat in hand. He didn't need to speak. His face said everything. Rex broke free from Lily's grasp and ran toward the gate, barking wildly. But when the officer knelt and opened the back of the car, the barking stopped. Inside lay Daniel's bloodied vest and Rex's leash, torn at the end. The dog whimpered, his tail dropping. Lily's mother screamed. Lily didn't. She just stood there, staring, clutching the fabric of her dress in both fists, as if trying to hold the world together. That night, Rex lay at the foot of her bed, his fur damp from rain and tears. The sound of the storm outside mixed with the faint hum of her father's lullaby, echoing from her memory, from somewhere deep inside. Days later, the police report arrived. Officer Daniel Carter, killed in explosion during drug bust. Suspect identified as Marcus Hale. The name meant nothing to Lily, but to the department, it was neat and convenient. Too convenient. The chief called it bravery. The papers called it tragedy. But a few of Daniel's old colleagues whispered over drinks that the story didn't add up. The scene of the blast didn't match the official narrative. The chain of evidence was sloppy, and one signature, on the approval order, belonged to someone higher up, a man with too much power to question. But Lily didn't know any of that. All she knew was that her father wasn't coming home. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Lily sat on the porch steps, clutching Rex's collar tag. The metal was cool against her palm, engraved with the words her father had chosen. Truth has a melody. She traced the letters over and over until they blurred through her tears. Rex rested his head on her knee, eyes filled with sorrow only loyalty could understand. "Daddy kept his promise," she whispered. "He's still singing." Somewhere far away, thunder rumbled again, softer this time, almost like the low hum of a piano key being pressed in the dark. And for the first time since that day, Lily hummed along. Weeks passed, but time felt frozen inside the Carter home. The world outside went on, traffic lights changing, mailboxes filling, people laughing. Yet inside those quiet walls, everything had stopped the moment Daniel didn't come home. Lily sat by the window most days, her small body wrapped in a blanket too big for her. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. Her eyes followed the rain sliding down the glass, as if each drop carried a thought she couldn't say aloud. The once bright house filled with laughter and piano music now echoed only with the sound of Rex's slow footsteps and the faint hum of the refrigerator. The therapists came and went, gentle voices, soothing tones, questions that never reached her. "Do you want to talk about your dad, Lily?" Silence. "Do you remember the song he used to play?" More silence. Every word from others seemed to bounce off a wall she had built deep inside, a wall made of grief, confusion, and the cruel weight of a child's understanding that something precious was gone forever. But Rex didn't ask questions. He just stayed. Wherever Lily went, he followed. A constant shadow of warmth in a house gone cold. At night, he curled beside her bed. When nightmares made her whimper in her sleep, his paw reached out, resting gently over her arm until she stilled again. He didn't need words to comfort her. He just breathed with her, slow, steady, faithful. It was the only rhythm that kept her tethered to the world. The police psychologist, Dr. Avery, began visiting once a week. A kind woman in her 40s, with lines of fatigue around her eyes, she believed that healing often spoke through silence. So she didn't force Lily to talk. Instead, she listened, not with her ears, but with her patience. One evening, as the mother poured tea and sat nearby, Dr. Avery watched Lily trace her fingers along the edge of the piano keys. She didn't press them. Not yet. She just touched them, as though afraid the music might hurt if she brought it back. Then, faintly, she began to hum. The melody floated through the dim room. That same lullaby. Haunting. Familiar. It drifted between the walls like a ghost that refused to leave. Dr. Avery tilted her head. "She hums that every time," she whispered to the mother. "Always the same song?" The mother nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, especially when she hears his name." The psychologist's eyes softened. It's not just a song to her. It's memory. Rex stirred from his spot near the rug, lifting his head. His ears perked up, recognizing the tune instantly. His body went still, gaze fixed on the piano. Lily's humming grew louder, steadier. Then suddenly, Rex moved. He rose, padded to the piano, and placed one paw gently on the lowest key. The note rang out, soft and deep, blending perfectly with Lily's humming. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened. She turned to him, and for the first time in weeks, something alive flickered in her gaze. Rex pressed another key, then another, clumsy but deliberate. The same 3 notes Daniel always began with. Lily gasped. Her hands trembled. "Rex." The dog looked up at her, tail giving a single slow wag, eyes locked on hers as though to say, "You remember too." And then it happened. That moment when silence cracked open like thin ice beneath the weight of love. Her lips moved, barely a whisper, but enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Daddy." It was the first word she had spoken since the funeral. The mother dropped her cup, porcelain shattering, across the floor, but she didn't care. She rushed forward, falling to her knees beside her daughter, pulling her into her arms. Tears spilled freely down her face, the kind that hurt and heal all at once. Lily buried her face in her mother's shoulder, still whispering that single word over and over, as if calling her father back through sound. "Daddy! Daddy!" Rex leaned against them, his head pressed between them, a bridge between grief and comfort. Dr. Avery's voice was soft but awed. She's remembering through him, the dog. He's her connection. That night, long after the therapist had gone, Lily sat at the piano again. Her mother watched quietly from the doorway, unwilling to break the fragile peace that had returned to the room. Tiny fingers pressed uncertainly at the keys. A few wrong notes, a few pauses. But soon, the lullaby found its rhythm again. The sound was tender, like a whisper from another world. Only this time the words were different, not the same ones her father used to sing. Lily's small voice slipped in new lines, changing a word here, a syllable there. It wasn't random. It felt intentional, as though her heart was rearranging the melody into a message she didn't yet understand. Her mother frowned, listening closely. "Sweetheart, what are you singing?" Lily didn't answer. She looked lost in the song, her eyes glassy, as if she were half awake, half somewhere else. Truth, melody, keep, she sang softly, the phrases broken and cryptic. The mother shivered. Something about the pattern made her uneasy. The same words appeared in fragments, always the same sequence, always in the same places of the song. When Lily finished, she rested her hand on Rex's head. "Daddy said the song tells the truth," she murmured dreamily, then leaned against him, exhausted. Her mother's throat tightened. Those were Daniel's exact words: level, moderate. It will always tell the truth. She turned to look at the piano, at the faint scratches on the wood where Daniel's wedding ring had once brushed as he played. The thought sent a chill down her spine. Was it possible that the song, this simple lullaby, held something more? That night, while Lily slept curled beside Rex, her mother sat by the piano and hummed the tune herself. She wrote down the lyrics as she remembered them. Daniel's version first, then Lily's. When she compared them, she noticed something strange. Certain words shifted each time Lily sang, the same pattern repeating, like the letters were pointing toward something. The discovery both terrified and comforted her. Outside, wind rustled through the trees. In the dim light, the piano stood silent, yet it seemed to hum with energy, as though waiting for someone to unlock its secret. The mother brushed her fingers across the keys and whispered, "Daniel, what did you leave us?" Rex opened one eye from where he lay on the rug, his gaze steady, protective. The sound of Lily's soft breathing filled the room. And once again, faint but certain, the lullaby returned, drifting from her lips even in sleep. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that feels heavier than sound. Outside, the moon hung low and pale, casting a silver path across the floorboards of the Carter living room. The old piano sat untouched by the window, its keys reflecting the faint glow of streetlights. Every so often, the house creaked, as if sighing under the weight of memory. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, one small hand tangled in Rex's fur. Her mother sat nearby, reading through the notes she'd written. The strange lyrics, the repeating letters, the fragments of hidden words. None of it made sense yet, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel had meant for them to find something. Rex stirred. His ears twitched, nose lifting toward the air. A low growl hummed in his throat, not out of fear but purpose. Slowly he rose and padded toward the hallway. His claws clicked softly against the floor, steady and deliberate. "Rex," the mother whispered, setting her papers aside. He didn't respond, of course, just kept walking, sniffing along the edge of the wall, tail rigid in concentration. Then he stopped, at an old wooden dresser, one that had belonged to Daniel. The bottom drawer was slightly ajar, dust lining its handle. Rex scratched at it once, then again, a third time, harder. The mother frowned and knelt beside him. "What is it, boy?" He pressed his nose to the crack, whining softly. Something inside the drawer, something he could smell, something that still carried Daniel's scent. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the drawer open. Inside were ordinary things: folded papers, a pair of gloves, an old badge polished to a dull gleam. But beneath them, wedged between two folders, was a small, battered voice recorder, the kind Daniel used to carry on long shifts. The sight of it made her heart skip. She brushed her thumb across the scratched surface, her breath catching. "Daniel," she whispered. She pressed the play button. Static filled the room, that low, crackling hum of a recording too old for comfort. Then, beneath it, came his voice. "Hey, Bug," the voice said warmly. "If you're hearing this, it means I had to leave for work before you woke up." The sound of his laughter, quiet, deep, drifted through the speaker. Lily stirred on the couch but didn't wake. "Remember our song?" Daniel continued. "It's not just music. It's a code. Each word's first letter. That's our secret alphabet. Promise you'll remember, okay?" Her hand froze mid-air. Tears welled in her eyes. He wasn't just teaching a tune. He was leaving a message. Rex barked once, startling her. Lily stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Mommy?" The mother pressed a finger to her lips. "Listen, sweetheart." The recording continued, Daniel's tone softening. "If something ever happens, and you can't say the truth, sing it. The song will tell them everything. You're braver than you think, Bug. I love you." A pause. Then the faint sound of piano keys, the very melody that had haunted their home for weeks. Lily sat upright, clutching Rex's fur. "That's Daddy," she gasped, voice trembling with joy and sorrow. Her mother nodded, tears spilling freely now. "Yes, sweetheart. He left us this." But as Daniel's song played, the mother noticed something else. A muffled conversation in the background, almost buried beneath the music. She turned the volume up, pressing the recorder close to her ear. Two voices. One was Daniel's. The other, she recognized from somewhere. "Raymond, we can't let this slide," Daniel said on the tape. And then a second voice, deeper, colder, answered, "You're in over your head, Carter. Let it go." The name hit her like a blow. Raymond. She remembered it from the report. Thomas Raymond. Daniel's commanding officer. The man who had spoken at the funeral, his speech dripping with practiced grief. The same man who signed the mission report that blamed a low-level dealer for the explosion. Her stomach turned. She replayed it again and again, each time hearing the same warning tone in Raymond's voice. Rex growled, low and tense, as if he too recognized the danger in that name. The mother clutched the recorder tightly, her breath shallow. The lullaby wasn't just a code, it was a lifeline. Daniel must have known he wouldn't come back. She looked down at Lily, who now held the small device between her hands like it was made of glass. Her face glowed faintly in the moonlight, eyes wide and shimmering with tears. "Mommy," she whispered, "Daddy said the song tells the truth. Can we tell them now?" The mother hesitated. Her heart raced. Fear warred with resolve. If Raymond was involved, if Daniel had been framed, this could destroy everything. But hiding it meant betraying the man who had trusted her to carry his truth forward. She swallowed hard. "Yes, baby. We'll tell them. But not with words." Lily looked down, brushing her fingers across Rex's collar tag, the one that read, "Truth has a melody." "Daddy said to sing." Her mother's breath caught again. Through her tears, she managed a broken smile. "Then we'll let the song speak for us." The next morning, the sunlight seemed different, sharper, cutting through the gloom that had lived in their home for months. The mother dressed Lily carefully, brushing her hair, smoothing her dress. She slipped the voice recorder into her purse, right next to a folded photo of Daniel in uniform. In that picture, Daniel stood beside Thomas Raymond, both smiling at the camera. But now, knowing what she knew, that smile looked different, forced, tense. His hand on Daniel's shoulder didn't look friendly anymore. It looked like control. As they left the house, Rex trotted beside them, his posture alert, protective. He could feel the change, the purpose that had returned to his humans. At the courthouse steps, the mother paused. She looked up at the towering building, its stone facade cold and indifferent. Then she knelt in front of Lily. "Sweetheart, are you sure you want to do this?" Lily nodded. "I promised Daddy." Her mother smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Then we'll keep his promise, together." She took a deep breath and entered the building. Inside, as the echo of footsteps faded down the hall, the recorder in her bag clicked softly, the tape rewinding itself to the start of Daniel's voice. Each word's first letter. It's our secret alphabet. The sound played like a whisper from another world, a father's last message guiding his daughter toward the truth. And outside, the wind carried a faint tune through the trees, the same lullaby that would soon change everything. The courthouse had never felt this crowded. Rows of spectators filled every inch of space, journalists clutching notepads, police officers standing shoulder to shoulder, and members of the public craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the child at the center of it all. The air was thick, humming with quiet expectation. Even the fluorescent lights above seemed dimmer, as though the room itself understood the weight of the moment. At the far end of the aisle, the heavy doors creaked open. Lily Carter stepped through, her small figure framed in the doorway. She wore a pale blue dress, simple but clean, her hair neatly brushed. In one hand, she held Rex's leash. In the other, the small, worn voice recorder that carried her father's voice, the last thread connecting her to him. Every head turned. The noise in the room fell to a whisper, then to silence. Rex walked proudly at her side, his movements measured, protective. The soft click of his claws on the marble floor echoed with the rhythm of authority. Not as a pet, but as a police officer's partner still on duty. Lily's mother followed close behind, her eyes full of courage and fear in equal measure. The prosecutor stood waiting near the front, his papers trembling slightly in his hand. He had been in courtrooms his entire career, but never had he felt the kind of reverence this child carried simply by walking in. At the defense table, Thomas Raymond sat motionless. His face was calm, but his fingers drummed slowly on the wood. His eyes darted toward the little girl, and for the briefest second, something flickered behind his composed facade. Lily climbed the steps to the witness stand with care, Rex pressing close beside her. She was too small for the chair again, and the bailiff brought a cushion to lift her higher. She clutched the recorder to her chest, her knuckles white. The judge leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Miss Carter," he said softly, "thank you for being here today. Can you tell us what you remember about your father?" The room held its breath. Lily looked down at her lap, then at Rex. The German shepherd's ears perked up, his steady gaze fixed on her face, as if he could feel the storm of fear and love warring inside her. Slowly, she placed her free hand on his head. His warmth steadied her breathing. When she finally looked up, her eyes were glistening, but her voice, small and fragile, carried through the silence. "I remember the song." A soft murmur rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor nodded encouragingly. "The song your father used to sing to you?" She nodded once. Then, without warning, she pressed the play button on the recorder. Daniel's voice filled the room, faint, distant, crackling through old static. Each word's first letter. It's our secret alphabet. Promise you'll remember. The crowd shifted, confused, intrigued. The judge glanced toward the recorder, then back at Lily. She took a deep breath. Then, she began to sing. It started softly, so soft that a few people leaned forward to catch the sound. The melody was delicate, trembling like a candle flame in the wind. But as her voice rose, the entire courtroom went still. Her song was not like a lullaby now. It was slow, haunting, deliberate. Each verse carried strange details, numbers, names, places, woven so carefully into the lyrics that most wouldn't notice their pattern unless they truly listened. 4 shadows in the night, 3 whispers by the gate, 1 promise kept in silver light, and truth will never wait. Each word hung in the air like a puzzle piece, sliding into place. The judge's pen froze mid-stroke. The prosecutor lowered his notes completely. Even the defense attorney, usually composed and cold, stopped fidgeting with his tie. Rex sat unmoving at her feet, eyes trained forward, as though standing guard over the truth itself. As the song continued, Lily's voice began to tremble. She sang names: Marcus, Thomas, Station 12, details that matched the evidence buried in her father's final mission report. But she wasn't reading a statement. She was breathing her father's voice back into the world. The melody swelled with emotion. Somewhere in the back, a woman began to cry quietly. Another officer shifted uncomfortably, recognizing words only someone from their department would understand. Radio codes, dates, internal signals. The deeper she sang, the more faces changed. The realization was spreading. This wasn't just a child's song. It was a testimony. Lily's voice cracked at the final verse, but she pushed through, clutching the recorder tightly. Daddy said the song tells truth, even when the world is blind. Each letter leads the way to proof, to the name he left behind. Her last note lingered, trembling in the air until it faded completely. Silence followed, not the awkward kind, but the kind that wraps around you when something sacred has just happened. Tears ran freely now. The judge's eyes glistened. The court stenographer sat frozen, forgetting to type. Even the officers standing in the back bowed their heads, some whispering prayers under their breath. Only Thomas Raymond remained rigid, but his knuckles had gone white against the table. His jaw clenched tight. He avoided Lily's gaze, staring instead at the floor, as if the sound itself burned. Rex broke the silence. He lifted his head, chest expanding with a low, guttural growl. Not aggressive, but warning. His eyes locked on Raymond. The tension was electric. The judge looked up slowly, voice unsteady. "Mr. Prosecutor," he said, "I want every word of that song transcribed. Now." The prosecutor nodded quickly, signaling the clerk. Lily lowered her head, exhausted. Her small hands trembled as she switched off the recorder. Rex pressed against her leg, steadying her again. The mother, seated in the front row, could no longer hold back her tears. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Carter," he said gently, "you did something very brave today. Your father would be proud." Lily didn't speak, only reached down and stroked Rex's fur. "He told me to sing," she whispered softly. So I did. For a long moment, no one in the room moved. It felt as though the walls themselves were listening, as though the echo of that small, trembling voice would linger there forever. And somewhere, deep in the quiet after her song, the first spark of truth had finally been lit. The air inside the courtroom felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Lily's song still hung in the air, echoing faintly in every mind, heavy with words no one dared forget. The silence that followed was unlike any other, reverent, expectant, almost fearful, as if the truth itself were holding its breath. The judge leaned back slowly in his chair, eyes fixed on the small girl who had just sung her heart out before a nation. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. He had known Daniel Carter. Years ago they had served side by side, one on the bench, the other in the field. Daniel had been young then, fearless, idealistic. The judge remembered his voice, calm, determined, always talking about justice like it was something sacred. And now, it was Daniel's daughter, this fragile, brave little girl, who had brought that word back into his courtroom. "Mr. Prosecutor," the judge said softly, breaking the silence, "bring me the transcription of that song. Every word." The clerk hurried forward, handing over the freshly typed lyrics. The judge studied the paper carefully, eyes scanning line after line. At first, it looked like simple poetry, but then he noticed the pattern, the strange rhythm in how each verse began. His pulse quickened. He picked up a pen and underlined the first letter of each line, then the second verse, then the third. One by one, the letters began to form something, not random, not accidental. He frowned, whispering under his breath as he pieced them together. H-O! The prosecutor leaned closer. "What is it, Your Honor?" The judge didn't answer immediately. His eyes moved faster now, tracing the letters, connecting them across verses. Each initial, each choice of word, too precise to be coincidence. Finally, his pen froze. His voice, when it came, trembled with the weight of revelation. Thomas Raymond. The name rang out like thunder. For a heartbeat, the entire room went still. Then, gasps erupted like a wave crashing against stone. People turned, eyes wide, searching for the man whose name had just been spoken. At the defense table, Thomas Raymond sat frozen, the confident smirk he'd worn since morning dissolving into disbelief. His jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed panic. "That's ridiculous," he hissed under his breath, half to himself, half to his attorney. "It's a trick, some child's game." But even as he spoke, the judge's gaze bore into him. Steady, knowing. "Officer Raymond," the judge said, voice low but firm, "would you care to explain why your name is encoded in a child's song about her father's death?" Thomas opened his mouth, but no words came out. His face turned pale, the blood draining from it. The eyes of every officer in the room were on him now, men and women who had served under him, who had respected him. The prosecutor's voice cut through the murmurs. "Your Honor, may I submit that the pattern cannot be coincidental? These letters appear in perfect order across multiple verses. Each corresponds to operational details from Officer Carter's final mission, details only someone involved in planning it could have known." The defense attorney stammered, "Objection! This is absurd. It's a song, not evidence." "Sit down," the judge snapped, his tone sharper now. The authority in his voice silenced the room instantly. He turned to the bailiff. "Play the recording." The recorder clicked on again. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, warm and familiar, cutting through the tension like sunlight through fog. Each word's first letter. It's our secret alphabet. Promise you'll remember. Then, in the background, that faint conversation the mother had discovered days earlier. Raymond's voice, cold and clear as steel. "You're in over your head, Carter. Let it go." A ripple of shock spread through the room. No one dared move. The prosecutor's hands shook slightly as he leaned forward. "Your Honor, that is the same voice." "I know," the judge interrupted quietly. "I recognize it too." He looked directly at Thomas Raymond. "I served with Daniel Carter for 15 years. I know his voice, and I know yours, Raymond." Thomas's eyes darted toward the exit. His hand twitched toward the briefcase beside him. Then came a sound no one expected, a deep, guttural growl from the witness stand. Rex. He stood rigid now, ears flattened, teeth bared in silent warning. His body was trembling, but not from fear, from memory. Every muscle remembered that man, the smell, the tone, the night of the explosion. Instinct surged back like fire. "Rex, no," Lily whispered softly, placing her hand on his neck. But her voice only steadied him. It didn't stop the truth in his reaction. The entire courtroom watched as the German shepherd's growl deepened, resonating through the walls like a primal echo of justice. Thomas took a step back. "Call off that dog," he barked, his voice cracking under pressure. The judge slammed his gavel once. "Sit down, Mr. Raymond." But Thomas didn't. He grabbed his briefcase, knocking over his chair in the process, and made a move toward the aisle. Officers immediately stepped forward, blocking his path. "Don't make this worse," one warned. "Get out of my way," Thomas snapped, but his voice betrayed panic now. Sweat glistened at his temple. Then Rex barked, one sharp, thunderous bark that cut through the chaos like a gunshot. The sound froze everyone in place. For a moment, time stopped. The judge rose from his seat, voice trembling but resolute. "This court is hereby ordering the immediate detention of Officer Thomas Raymond for investigation into the death of Officer Daniel Carter." Gasps and murmurs erupted again. Cameras clicked. The defense attorney dropped his pen. As the bailiffs moved in, Thomas's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him. He glanced once at Lily, a fleeting, haunted look, and for the first time, guilt flickered across his face. "Case reopened," the judge declared, striking the gavel once more. The sound reverberated like thunder across the walls. Rex let out a low sigh, lowering his head, as if releasing years of grief and loyalty in one breath. Lily reached down, hugging him tightly, tears wetting his fur. The courtroom dissolved into motion, reporters rushing out, officers murmuring, the mother weeping silently in the front row. But amid the chaos, one thing was clear: a father's truth, hidden in a song and carried by a loyal dog and his little girl, had finally broken through the lies. And in that moment, justice, long buried, began to breathe again. The cold hum of fluorescent lights filled the interrogation room. The air was thick, not with heat, but with the weight of truth finally cornered. Thomas Raymond sat slumped in his chair, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up, sweat clinging to his temples. His hands, once so steady, so commanding, now shook as they rested on the metal table. Before him lay a small stack of files, a recorder, and a photo of Daniel Carter in uniform, smiling. Across from him sat Detective Harris, one of the department's internal affairs officers, his face carved with exhaustion and quiet anger. Two other officers stood by the door, watching, waiting. Thomas exhaled, a bitter sound breaking the silence. "You think this will fix anything?" Harris didn't look up. "Start talking." Thomas leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if the answers were written there. Daniel was a good cop. Too good. He asked questions no one else had the guts to ask. He started digging where he shouldn't have. His voice cracked on the last word. Harris slid a file toward him, one of the recovered records. "The drug operation?" Thomas nodded. "It wasn't supposed to go bad. It was a clean deal. At least it looked that way on paper. But one of our informants went rogue. Money started moving that didn't match our books. Daniel noticed. He came to me, said he was going to report it. I tried to warn him off. Told him it was bigger than both of us." He swallowed hard, voice trembling. But he wouldn't stop. He was loyal to the badge, not the people wearing it. The recorder on the table clicked as it captured every word. Harris's tone stayed level. "So you framed him." Thomas's silence said more than any answer could. His shoulders sagged. "It was supposed to protect the department," he murmured. "A cover-up until things cooled off. I never meant for him to die." Harris's jaw clenched. "You signed the mission order. You sent him in without backup." Thomas's eyes glistened. "Because if I didn't, they would have come after me next." For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the ceiling light. Then, finally, Harris leaned forward. "He left something behind, you know, a song. Every letter, every word. He built it like a case file, and it led us right back to you." Thomas's head dropped into his hands. His voice came out small, broken. "Of course he did. Daniel always believed truth had a voice." Flashback. The scene shifts. The sterile light fades into warm, golden hues. Daniel sits at the old piano, the same one Lily would later touch with trembling fingers. His uniform jacket hangs on the chair, and his badge glints faintly under the lamp. A tape recorder sits beside the sheet music. He speaks softly as he plays, his voice calm but heavy. "If anything happens, they'll twist the story, but they can't twist music." He glances toward a photo of Lily and his wife on the mantel. "You'll find it, Bug. You always listen better than anyone." His fingers move over the keys, gentle, deliberate, as he hums the first notes of the lullaby. The melody carries a strange, coded rhythm, the pattern of a man both scared and brave. The music fades into the background as his voice overlays it. Each word's first letter. It's our secret alphabet. Truth will always find a way. He stops recording, sits there for a long moment. The sound of Rex padding across the floor fills the silence. The dog rests his head on Daniel's lap, as if sensing the weight of goodbye. Daniel's hand trembles slightly as he strokes Rex's fur. "Watch over them, partner. Promise me." Rex lets out a quiet whine, a sound that would later echo through Lily's memories. Back in the interrogation room, Thomas wipes his face with his hands. "He didn't deserve it," he mutters. "None of it." Harris closes the file. "You're right. He didn't." Outside, the first light of morning filters through the blinds. Justice, long delayed, is finally stirring awake. That afternoon, the courthouse fills once more. The energy is different this time. Solemn, respectful, charged with grief and relief woven together. The judge enters, his expression composed, but his eyes soft. The court has received full confession and corroborating evidence, he announces. We hereby clear Officer Daniel Carter of all charges posthumously. A murmur spreads through the room, a quiet wave of emotion too deep for applause. At the front, Lily sits beside her mother, holding Rex's leash. She's older somehow, not in years, but in spirit. She doesn't fully understand the legal words, but she feels the shift in the air. She feels peace returning. Her mother covers her mouth with trembling hands, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. She had waited so long for this, for someone to say what she'd always known. Daniel was innocent. Lily looks up at the judge. Does that mean Daddy can rest now? She whispers. The judge meets her eyes so much like Daniel's. Yes, sweetheart, he says softly. He can. Rex leans his head into Lily's lap. She runs her fingers through his fur, her touch gentle, reverent. Daddy kept his promise, she whispers. The mother leans over and presses a kiss to her daughter's hair. Yes, he did. He always does. Across the aisle, reporters quietly lower their cameras. Even the hardest hearts in the room can't bring themselves to shatter the sacred quiet that follows. For once, the courtroom isn't a place of arguments or verdicts. It's a place of healing. The judge stands, removing his glasses. His voice, thick with emotion, fills the room one last time. Officer Daniel Carter, cleared of all wrongdoing. His bravery and integrity shall be remembered by this department and by this court with the highest honor. The gavel falls, not with thunder this time, but with grace. Rex lets out a low, contented rumble, a sound halfway between a sigh and a song. Lily smiles through her tears. The melody that once carried pain now holds peace, and somewhere, in the quiet corners of their hearts, they can almost hear Daniel's voice again. Soft, proud, unbroken. Truth has a melody. You just have to listen. The morning sky stretched clear and soft over the city, a rare blue after weeks of gray. A gentle breeze carried the scent of rain-washed streets and blooming dogwood trees. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. The police department courtyard was filled with people, officers in dress uniform, families, reporters, and citizens who had come to witness the ceremony. A podium stood at the front, draped with the department's flag. Rows of polished badges gleamed under the sunlight. At the center of it all was a framed photograph. Officer Daniel Carter, smiling, eyes bright with that quiet kind of confidence that only truly good men have. Beneath it sat his folded uniform hat and his Medal of Valor, one that would finally be pinned where it belonged. Lily stood close to her mother in the front row, clutching the leash of Rex, who sat proudly beside her, chest high, eyes alert. He was older now, a few silver strands glinting in his fur, but his posture was perfect, dignified. The crowd seemed to part naturally around him, instinctively recognizing the kind of presence that didn't need rank or words to command respect. The police chief, a tall man with a somber face, stepped up to the microphone. He took a deep breath, his voice steady but warm. Today we gather not in mourning, but in honor, he began. Officer Daniel Carter was more than a fine officer. He was a man who believed that truth mattered, even when it was hard to find. He gave everything for that belief, and today we give back the honor that should have always been his. The crowd fell silent. A few officers bowed their heads. The chief continued, his gaze moving toward Lily. We also honor those who carried his truth forward, his wife, his daughter, and his partner, Rex. At the mention of his name, Rex lifted his head, tail giving a slow, respectful wag. A small ripple of soft laughter and tears moved through the crowd. Today, the chief said, his voice breaking slightly, we present the Medal of Valor to Officer Daniel Carter, posthumously, for loyalty beyond duty, for courage beyond fear. He stepped down from the podium and turned toward Lily. She stood frozen for a moment, the sunlight glinting off her tearful eyes. Her mother gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Go ahead, sweetheart, she whispered. He'd want you to do it. Lily nodded and walked forward, small steps echoing across the courtyard. Rex followed beside her, his gait perfectly in sync with hers. The chief knelt, lowering the medal to Lily's height. She reached out and took it, her fingers trembling slightly as they closed around the cool metal. The inscription caught the light. Valor and truth. She turned to Rex. His gaze met hers, steady and knowing. For a heartbeat, it was as if Daniel were right there, standing between them, proud and smiling. Carefully, Lily knelt and fastened the medal to Rex's collar, right below his badge tag that still read, Truth has a melody. The moment her fingers brushed the metal, Rex straightened, tall, proud, silent, a soldier acknowledging his fallen partner. The chief's voice came over the microphone again, softer now. For a bond that never broke, even in death. Applause filled the courtyard. Not loud or raucous, but slow, heartfelt, rising like a prayer. Officers stood at attention, some saluting through tears. The sound of hands coming together echoed against the stone walls, mixing with the faint rustle of flags in the breeze. Lily stepped back beside her mother. She leaned down and wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, pressing her cheek against his fur. You did it, boy, she whispered. Daddy's proud of us. Her mother crouched beside her, eyes glistening. Rex is family now, she murmured. He'll live with us forever. Our last piece of your dad. Lily looked up, smiling through her tears. Not the last, she said softly. Daddy's still in the song. Her mother smiled faintly. You're right, sweetheart. He always will be. The band at the side of the courtyard began to play. A slow, solemn, instrumental piece. It wasn't the lullaby, but the melody carried the same emotional weight. As the music swelled, sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering golden rays across the stage. Lily looked down at the medal on Rex's collar. The reflection shimmered against her small hands. She closed her eyes and began to hum, quiet at first, almost like a breath, then stronger. The same lullaby. But this time, there was no sorrow in her voice, only warmth. The melody floated gently through the air, weaving through the sound of applause and wind and memory. People turned to listen, grown men wiping their eyes, mothers holding their children closer. The song carried something pure, something that words could never express. It wasn't a song of mourning anymore. It was a song of homecoming. Rex's ears twitched. He turned his head toward her, listening, his gaze soft. When she finished, he nudged her hand with his nose as if to say, He heard you. The chief stepped forward one last time. In honor of Officer Daniel Carter, and in recognition of his partner's service, Rex is hereby retired with full honors. He will remain with the Carter family as a hero, a guardian, and a symbol of everything we stand for. Applause rose again, louder this time, proud and free. Lily looked up toward the sky. For a fleeting second, she thought she saw something. Sunlight breaking through in a perfect beam, shining down on her, her mother, and Rex. She smiled. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. "We did it." The crowd began to disperse slowly, the ceremony ending, but the feeling lingered, like a song that refuses to fade after the last note. As they walked away from the podium, Lily glanced back at the framed photo of Daniel. His smile caught the light just right, almost alive. Rex walked beside her, the metal clinking softly against his collar, a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. And as they stepped into the sunlight, Lily hummed once more, the lullaby rising gently into the breeze, a melody of love, loyalty, and the kind of truth that never dies. 10 years had passed. The seasons had come and gone, painting the city in cycles of gold, snow, and rain. But time had been gentle with Lily Carter. Now 17, she stood taller, her features softer but resolute, the quiet strength of her father etched into her every expression. The morning sun shimmered against the memorial square, a place carved in marble and memory. Rows of plaques lined the stone wall, each engraved with names that carried stories of sacrifice. Fresh flowers lay beneath them, tributes from strangers, friends, families who still whispered to the wind. At the center stood one plaque that glowed faintly in the light. Officer Daniel Carter, for loyalty beyond duty, for courage beyond fear. Lily knelt before it, fingers brushing the engraved letters. The coolness of the stone met the warmth of her hand, and for a moment, she could almost feel his pulse beneath her fingertips. Beside her, Rex lay down slowly, his muzzle now streaked with silver, his movements careful but proud. His eyes, still sharp, still full of heart, followed her every motion. "Hey, old boy," she whispered, scratching gently behind his ear. "We made it back again." Rex huffed softly, his tail brushing against her leg. The park around them was quiet, except for the distant sound of birds and the rustling of flags overhead. Lily opened her backpack and pulled out a small, worn notebook, one her mother had given her, filled with sheet music and scribbled lyrics. She sat cross-legged on the ground, flipping to a page she'd rewritten 100 times, the lullaby, her father's song. Only now, the words were different. It wasn't a secret anymore. It was a story. Her voice was calm, clear, and mature as she sang softly under her breath. "Truth once whispered through the rain, now sings in hearts that heal again. Where courage falls, love will remain, a melody that knows no end." Her hand drifted to Rex's head. "You remember it, don't you?" He gave a faint bark, his ears twitching. Lily smiled. "You always do." Behind them, the sound of footsteps approached. Young voices, laughter. A group of new recruits in blue K9 cadet shirts made their way across the courtyard, carrying notebooks and training leads. "Miss Carter," one called out. "They said you'd be here." Lily rose, brushing the dust off her jeans. She turned, her long hair catching in the sunlight. "Right on time," she said warmly. "You're early for training. That's a good start." The cadets gathered around, eyes bright, nervous energy buzzing in the air. Most of them had only seen her in photos, the girl who sang the truth in court. But now she was their mentor, calm and confident, carrying a quiet authority born not from rank, but from history. Rex stood beside her, posture perfect despite his age. The recruits whispered softly, awed by the sight of the legendary dog whose story had become part of the academy's lessons. "All right," Lily said, folding her arms lightly. "Before we start, I want you to remember something." She gestured toward Rex. "This old guy taught me more about courage than any textbook ever could. He taught me that loyalty isn't just following orders, it's listening when no one else can hear." The group nodded, silent, respectful. She smiled faintly. "When I was your age, my dad told me something I didn't understand until much later. He said, 'Truth has a melody.' At the time, I thought he meant music, but he was talking about instinct, the kind that tells you when something's right or when something's wrong, the kind that dogs feel before we do." One of the younger recruits raised a hand hesitantly. "Miss Carter, is it true you used a song to tell the truth in court?" Lily's eyes softened. "Yes," she said quietly. "It wasn't just a song. It was my dad's voice, hidden in every note, every word. He knew one day I'd have to use it, and when that day came, I didn't speak the truth. I sang it." The cadets looked at her with a mix of awe and sadness. She smiled gently, easing the weight of the moment. "Music saved my father's name," she said. "But it also saved me. It reminded me that even when people lie, even when fear takes over, truth has a way of finding its rhythm again." Rex sat down at her feet, panting softly, eyes on her, as if proud of every word. Lily crouched beside him and ran her hand along his collar, where his medal still gleamed faintly. She turned to the recruits. "A song can save lives," she said simply, "if you know how to listen." Silence followed, the kind that humbles, not frightens. Then she clapped her hands, voice turning brighter. "All right, rookies, let's get to work. Rex will show you how it's done." Laughter broke the tension, and the recruits followed her to the training field nearby. The air filled with the sound of whistles, shouts, and barking as young K-9s ran through agility courses. Lily's movements were fluid, patient, gentle, confident. She corrected the handlers with calm precision, showing them how to signal trust instead of dominance. "Your dog isn't just an asset," she told them. "He's your heartbeat on 4 legs." As the sun began to set, the training session wound down. The sky turned gold, then rose, then deep violet. Lily stood with Rex at the edge of the field, watching the horizon. "You did good today, partner," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Still teaching, after all these years." Rex leaned into her, eyes half closed. His fur shimmered under the fading light. She looked up at the sky, at the first stars beginning to appear, and smiled. "We kept our promise, Dad," she whispered. "We never stopped listening." Somewhere in the distance, a piano played faintly, one of the recruits testing notes on the old academy instrument. The melody floated through the twilight, carrying the same rhythm her father once played. Lily closed her eyes, letting it wash over her, and when the last note faded, she could swear she heard another sound, a soft bark, a quiet laugh, a whisper of a lullaby in the wind. Winter had come quietly that year. Snow fell like feathers over the small Carter home, blanketing the world in soft white. The morning light filtered through the frosted windows, cold but tender, touching everything with a pale glow. The house was still, except for the faint hum of an old space heater and the slow, steady ticking of a wall clock. In the living room, Rex lay on his blanket near the piano. The same piano where Daniel once played, where Lily once sang, where truth had once found its voice. He was older now, much older. His once strong frame had grown thin, his muzzle white as snow. His breathing came slow and deep, the rhythm of a heart that had given everything it had. Yet even now, there was grace in him, that quiet dignity only a life of loyalty can shape. Beside him sat Lily, now a young woman. Her hair was longer, her features more defined, but her eyes, those eyes, still carried the same light her father once had. She had known this day would come. Still, knowing did nothing to make it easier. A mug of untouched tea cooled beside her. In her hands, she held her phone, the screen dim but glowing with a familiar file name, Dad's Song. Her thumb hovered for a long moment. Then, finally, she pressed play. The sound filled the quiet room. Daniel's voice, soft and warm, breaking through the years as if no time had passed at all. Each word's first letter. It's our secret alphabet. Promise you'll remember. Then came the melody, the same lullaby that had carried them through storms, trials, and tears. The music that had once revealed the truth now returned, not as a weapon or a clue, but as comfort. Rex's ears twitched. Slowly, he opened his eyes. The light in them was dim, but still there, faint embers refusing to fade. He turned his head toward the sound. Lily smiled through the ache in her chest. "Hey, partner," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You remember, don't you?" Rex gave a faint, rumbling sigh, half growl, half breath, and tried to lift his head. It trembled with effort. Lily quickly slipped her arm beneath him, steadying him, helping him rest his chin on her lap. The warmth of him, the weight of him, it broke her. She stroked his fur gently, her fingers tracing the collar that still carried Daniel's words. Truth has a melody. The metal was worn now, the engraving faded, but she could still feel the promise it carried. As the song played, Daniel's voice hummed softly beneath the melody. The piano joined in, tender and imperfect, like memory itself. Lily's tears fell silently onto Rex's fur, but she kept smiling, because she knew this wasn't the end. Rex shifted slightly. His paw, shaky but deliberate, reached out and landed on her hand. Lily froze, her heart twisting. His touch was weak, but it spoke louder than any words could. "I'm here," she whispered, pressing her other hand over his. "You did so good, boy. You kept us safe. You kept your promise." The music swelled softly, the final verse floating like breath in the cold morning air. "Daddy's waiting for you," she said, her voice trembling through tears. "Go find him, okay?" Rex blinked once, slow, tired, peaceful. Then he exhaled, a deep, quiet sigh. His body relaxed completely, his paw still resting in her hand. And just like that, he was gone. Lily didn't move for a long time. She sat there with him, her tears falling onto his fur, her father's voice still playing softly in the background. The song ended, but she replayed it again, needing the sound, needing the presence. Outside, snow continued to fall, steady, endless, like time itself pausing to pay its respects. Her mother found her there later, sitting quietly beside Rex. She didn't say anything, didn't need to. She simply knelt and wrapped her arms around her daughter, the two of them holding each other in the stillness. The next morning, the world felt softer, quieter. They buried Rex beside the old oak tree in the backyard, the same tree where Daniel used to toss his ball for him, the same place where Lily had once sung her first lullaby. A small marker was placed there. Rex, loyal partner, beloved friend. Lily laid her hand on the stone, whispering, "Rest now, boy. You earned it." A few days later, she visited her father's grave again. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she walked through the rows of marble. The sky was pale blue, the air crisp enough to sting her lungs. When she reached his name, she knelt, brushing away the thin layer of frost that had settled over the letters. She set down two things at the base of the stone: Rex's collar and a single white rose. "Hey, Dad," she said softly. "He's with you now." The wind picked up, whistling through the trees that lined the cemetery. The sound was strange, soft and melodic, almost like music. She closed her eyes and listened. For a moment, she could swear she heard it. The faint hum of that lullaby, drifting through the branches, carried by the wind. Her father's voice blending with the whisper of snow, with the heartbeat of memory. She smiled through her tears. "I kept my promise too, I promise," she whispered. "I listened." The wind brushed against her cheek, cold but gentle, as if someone unseen had reached out to touch her face. Lily rose slowly, her fingers lingering on the headstone. "Truth has a melody," she murmured, repeating the words engraved in her heart. "And it never stops playing." As she turned to leave, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering across the snow in glints of gold. For a heartbeat, she imagined two silhouettes, one man, one dog, standing together just beyond the trees, waiting. She smiled again, soft and sure. "Come on, Dad," she whispered. "He found you." The wind carried the faint echo of the lullaby once more, the melody of truth, love, and eternity, as the snow continued to fall, gentle and endless, wrapping the world in silence and grace. Some bonds don't need words. They live in the quiet look of trust, the brush of fur against your hand, the way a dog waits without question. Stories like Lily and Rex's remind us that love isn't measured in years, but in loyalty, in the silent promises kept between a human and their faithful friend. German Shepherds, in particular, have that rare kind of heart, brave enough to protect, gentle enough to heal. They don't just guard our homes, they guard our spirits. If this story touched you, maybe take a moment to do something special with your own dog today. Sit beside them, hum a little tune, or simply listen. Really listen. You might be surprised what they're saying without saying a word. And if you'd like to deepen that connection, there's a wonderful resource I've been exploring lately. One that helps people understand their dogs on a more emotional level. You don't have to, of course, but it's worth a look if your heart feels pulled that way. Because in the end, every good dog deserves more than care. They deserve to be understood,